Okay, let me make sure this is running. It's running. You're on.
Great. So everyone, I see that a few are unmuted. If you would, please mute yourselves. There will be questions that we can answer at the end. I already asked Joe's preference. Yes, he would prefer to just have those questions at the end. So write them down, put them in chat, whatever you'd like to do. So right now, if you haven't already done so, please mute yourself. Good, everybody's done that. And I am going to turn it over to Joe, who will give you a brief introduction about himself. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much, Ken. It's really nice to be here. I grew up not so far away from you. I grew up in the Pittsburgh area. I have spent a lot of time in Ohio. So nice to be back. And thank you very much for the invitation. Now, right now, I'm in San Diego. It might be a little bit warmer than it is there. Maybe slightly less snow. I mean, yeah, I don't see any frost on the palm trees out there, so no, we're good. But some of you know me, or at least know me by reputation. For those of you who don't, I have I have had an interesting and long and varied career. For some time, I was managing software development. I started writing books about computers back in 1996. And since about 2003, I guess, writing about technology has been my full-time job. And I have written over 60 books. In 2017, the publisher that was publishing most of my books decided that they wanted to get out of the book publishing business and asked me if I'd like to buy it, which to me sounded like a really odd thing, like an author buying their own publisher. But basically I said, sure, I'll do that. And I did. So I bought the whole publishing business. And so Take Control Books, which you can find at takecontrolbooks.com, has lots and lots of books on all kinds of tech stuff. And as I was telling Mary Frances earlier, we try to write our books for ordinary folk, not for, computer geeks. Certainly, if you are a computer geek, there's still good stuff in there that you will learn from. But what we try to do is take complicated or frustrating or painful topics and distill them down into easy to follow steps that, and explain stuff in a way that ordinary people can understand. And I have spoken it. I would have to count how many hundreds of user groups over the years. And when I go to user groups, either in person or, as has been the case for some time, virtually, I see pretty much the same demographic. I see a lot of gray hairs, and hear sort of a lot of the same kinds of concerns. And so we very much have you guys in mind when we are writing our books. I won't say that we're always perfect. We have had people say, I didn't understand that. Can you boil it down more? Sometimes we fail, but then we try to fix our mistakes. So we have books on a lot of topics that are sort of platform agnostic or multi-platform, things like online privacy and, using the cloud and, the one we're going to talk about today, your digital legacy. We have some that are specifically geared toward Apple users. So if you happen to be an Apple user, we have some books that are just for you. And we are trying to move in the direction of being more inclusive to the extent possible. But all of our books are ebooks. So you can get them in PDF format or EPUB or MobiPocket, so you can read them on virtually any device. And I think you'll find a lot to like on our website. So I hope you'll visit it. I'll give you the URL and also a coupon code you can use to save money on our books in just a second. I am one of about a dozen authors who have written books in our series, and we have lots more good things planned. I'll also mention that we treat our books kind of like software, or at least the way software used to be treated. So if we have a book and we find a bug, like a typo or some other minor error, then we'll release a free update to it, like version 1.0.1. If some bigger facts change, or we decide we need to cover a new topic, or software has been updated, we need to address that in the book, then we'll release version 1.1, and those will also be free. If we have a major revision, an author decides, you know what, so much has changed, I need to add a couple of new chapters, just massively refurbish this book, then we charge an upgrade fee. So just like software, maybe if a book costs $15, we might charge $5, $7.50, something like that, depending on the nature of the changes for a new edition. So we want to take care of our readers, and we hope that you will join us. So I am I sort of think of myself as a computer geek first, author second. One could argue one way or the other, but anyway, I write books, I publish books, and I am surrounded by, you can't see because it's all above and behind and below, but I have a lot of computers and other electronic devices all around me. So what I'm going to do now is share my screen right here. And if all has gone to plan, hopefully you will see a little blue thing called Take Control of Your Digital Legacy. This is one of the books that I wrote a few years ago. I'm actually going to be doing a new edition of this book, hopefully in the next couple of months. I don't know exactly. I have a very long queue of stuff that needs to be done. But another thing I didn't mention earlier is that when we come out with a new edition that would ordinarily be a paid upgrade, we grandfather in people that have bought the previous version within the last few months. So as long as you have given us permission to email you, we'll tell you how to get that update for free when it comes. So if you buy now, don't worry, you'll have we'll take care of you. Now, this topic is a little bit weird in that it's sort of all about death. And like, I know we're all just talking about COVID vaccinations, and I'm aware that that is like a thing that's on people's mind. Let me just say, I hope and expect this will be the most enjoyable and most useful presentation about death that you get to experience all year. So here we go. Oops, there we go. So this is the book that we're going to be talking about. Take Control of Your Digital Legacy. There's the URL. And of course, we have many other books in our catalog. It's normally $15, $10.50 for you. So make a note of that coupon code. This will show up again at the very end of the presentation. So it would be a good idea for you to put that in the chat or wherever. But if you don't have time, we'll get back to that later. You will not only get the book if you buy this, but also a downloadable template that you can fill in to make a digital will, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. And I hope you find that useful. Today, I'm going to give you a pretty healthy excerpt from the book. I can't cover everything in the book in the next 45 minutes or whatever we have. So for all of the details that I will not be able to tell you today, I really urge you to go pick up a copy. So I found this lovely billboard in a Google search. And there was certainly a time in my life that I could have just filled that in like that to make my will. And maybe some of you will find that that resonates. So a couple of things sort of got me started on this topic. One was that I would go to a user group like yours and I'd give a presentation on passwords or backups or something. And after the meeting, somebody would come up and they'd say, "Oh, thanks, Joe. That was nice. I really enjoyed what you had to say about fill in the topic, but what I want to know is, I'm 85 or whatever, and I want to know what I do with my backups after I'm dead, or how will my son be able to access my passwords, or how will my wife be able to get at all of my accounts?" Questions like this. And I thought, well, that's a really good question. I don't know the answer. I better go research it. So I went and researched it, and I came up with this book. So this the topic is sort of what you can do to make sure that all of your digital stuff, all of your data survives you. Now, I will qualify that to say the data that you want to survive. This is about making decisions now that will have rippling effects throughout possibly decades or centuries. Now, I have on the computer in front of me hundreds of thousands of email messages. I have, calendars stretching back decades. I've got tens of thousands of photographs. I have hundreds of hours of audio and video recordings of me. And I like to think that I could pass that stuff on to my kids and grandkids. I know I wish I had that kind of stuff about my grandparents. I have almost nothing. And earlier generations, I was talking before we started recording about how my great grandfather originally, when he was born, he had a different last name, and nobody in the family is even sure what that last name was. So compared to a couple of generations ago, now we have a tremendous ability to pass on all kinds of information to future generations if we want to. However, the important thing to keep in mind is that it won't happen automatically. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, yes, my computer will still be here, but that doesn't guarantee that the data on it is going to be available a year from now, or 10 or 50 or 100 years from now for the people who might want it. So that's part of the problem we want to solve. Now, obviously, this whole future descendants business is a big part of what we're talking about. What will your grandkids, great grandkids, whatever, be able to know about you? So long-term benefits for sure, but there are a couple of other aspects to why we're doing this. When you die, which of course I hope for all of us is very, very far in the future, your family or whoever remains behind is going to be sad, and they're going to be stressed. And in those first few days or week or however long, they're going to have to deal with a lot of stuff. There will be funeral arrangements. There will be, publishing an obituary. There will be, dealing with your will, which we will also talk about. And there will also be a lot of details. What about insurance policies? What about utilities? What about bills you've been paying? What about all kinds of different stuff? The more you get your stuff organized now in the way that I'm about to describe, the more help you will be giving to your loved ones in the immediate aftermath of your death. The same stuff that you do for really long-term planning can also help with that sort of immediate post-mortem situation. But to make this slightly less morbid, these very same planning steps can also help. One day, I believe, maybe even this calendar year, we will all be able to start thinking about taking vacations again. Wouldn't that be cool? We will be able to think about, oh, well, I think I'd like to, go to another country for a month, or go visit my kids in some other state for a month. When you leave home, either voluntarily because it's a vacation, or involuntarily because you're sick or you're injured and you're in the hospital for a while, once again, somebody else has to take care of stuff. You might have a house sitter come and, water your plants or feed the dog or whatever it is needs to be done in your house. You might have a relative take care of stuff while you're sick. There will be things that will have to be done. And once again, this same planning we're doing, organizing information and collecting in a certain way, will help those people that need to take care of short-term stuff, even in the relatively near future. So that's what we're talking about today. Now, as I said, simply the fact that I've got a computer here, or lots of computer, I got a computer, smartphone, tablet, all of these things. The fact that I have them now is not by itself going to help us out so much. One of those reasons is I'm a big fan of, strong, unique passwords and encrypting everything. And I use encryption everywhere. I've written about online privacy, and I've written about computer security, and I'm just really keen on keeping the bad guys out of my stuff, okay? However, the very same steps that I take to keep the bad guys out of my stuff would be a disadvantage if I died and all of my passwords were only in my head. Because, like, my wife would need to be able to get at my accounts to deal with stuff, to deal with my email, to deal, into our insurance account online, to pay our bills, to, all of those recordings and photographs and videos that I would love to pass on to my great grandchildren. Well, if they're all very safely encrypted on my computer and I'm the only one that knows the password, that's going to be a problem. There are other problems, though. So think back to the common file formats that were used for, digital photographs and word processing documents and video and audio files 100 years ago. Oh, wait, there weren't any. 100 years ago was analog days. Think back 50 years ago. Actually, it's mostly the same story. There are text files from 50 years ago that we can still read, but a lot of the file formats that we use today are fairly recent. And there have been plenty of file formats within all of our lifetimes that a lot of people used for a long time and then they disappeared. So even though we all sort of feel like, well, everybody in the world has Microsoft Word and, Acrobat Reader, and, there are all these file formats, .doc and .pdf and whatever, that just sort of everybody can read all the time, and we don't think about it, stuff changes over time. And there's no telling that the file formats you use today will still be readily readable in 50 or 100 years. Let's also think about actual hardware. So, you go up in your attic and you find a dusty old IBM PC, the original from like 1981. You're like, oh, somehow, weirdly, I forgot about this. Let's plug it in and see if it can turn on. Maybe it will. Do I have the, gigantic floppy disk or even a cassette drive that will boot this thing? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Magnetic media, as with all physical things, decays over time. If it's too hot, too cold, too humid, too dry, too whatever, that will hasten degradation. But, even if you put a floppy disk from 1981 in a, cool, dry bank vault, there's no guarantee at all that it'll still be readable today. We like to think that today's technology is better and more robust and has greater longevity, but who knows? So we do have to worry about just like equipment and media surviving. And then there's organization. So I've got a couple million files on this computer in front of me. You may have a similar number on yours. And you know, any modern PC, you know, Windows, Mac, Linux has search tools. You know, you can theoretically search by content for anything, even if your files aren't particularly well organized, they're not neatly named and in folders and things. However, you, the owner of the computer or whatever device, you know what you have, and you know what it is, and you know where it is, so you know what to look for. I like to give the example of maybe in my spare time, I wrote the Great American Novel, and nobody knows that I wrote the Great American Novel. So they don't know that it exists. They don't know what it's called. They wouldn't know what to search for amongst those million files if they were looking for it. And however much my children love me, I'm pretty sure that they don't love me enough to individually examine a couple million files just to see if maybe one of them might contain some nugget of literary greatness that they didn't already know about. So because you are the only one that knows what you have right now, if you want other people in the future to know what you have, you're going to have to write that down. So let's start writing. We need to inventory your digital assets. Now, I do not by any means suggest that you or I are going to list all of those millions of files and what they are and where they are and all that stuff, because life is too short. What I would suggest is that you make a list of major categories and the most important things in those categories. In other words, what you're trying to do is to say, hey, future people, this is the most important stuff that I have. This is the stuff that you might actually care about. And the place that you're going to do this is in a document that I'm calling a digital will. As I said, you buy the book, you get a free template you can download and just fill it out. Now, I want to emphasize that every municipality, city, state, country has different laws when it comes to wills. I hope that you have a conventional will. You should. If not, go get that taken care of right away. This is an additional document. Depending on your local rules, it may be necessary to have this additional document notarized. It may be necessary to staple it onto your will or to actually incorporate it into the text of your regular will. You will have to speak to a legal professional to get the specific details. But what I'm saying is that just as your regular will talks about what's going to happen to your house, your car, your money, your whatever assets, you need to spell out in considerable detail what you want to have happen to your digital assets. And whether you incorporate this into your regular will or you make it an addendum of some kind, I really urge you to do that. So what kinds of things will go in this inventory? Of course, I have all the details in the book, but one of the categories is going to be online accounts. Now, nobody cares if you have an account for my website. Nobody cares if you have an account for, like, a newspaper website or whatever. What we're talking about here is important online accounts, like your bank account, or if you're active on social media, your social media accounts, or your email accounts, things that you actively use, especially things that involve money, things that might contain really important information that other people will want to know in the future. If you are one of those people that still has like physical media, do you have some floppy disks, some recordable CDs, DVDs, zip drives, flash drives, whatever? Do you have physical media about you? That should go in your inventory as well. Now, software, of course, we probably all have hundreds of apps, and there is no point whatsoever in listing them all. Again, it doesn't matter for our purposes that you have a copy of Microsoft Word, because so does everybody else in the world. What I'm talking about here is software that might be unusual. Maybe you do, some kind of graphic design, or you're an architect, or you do complex financial models. You have some kind of unusual software that people in the future will need to have a copy of in order to read your stuff. Well, that would be an example of software you should list. Another example would be if you have some piece of really expensive software that you would like to leave to your spouse, child, whatever, you would want to list that. And then there's this really gigantic category of everything else. And I don't mean to make that sound less important because it's listed last and it includes the word other. In fact, this is the biggest and most important category. This can include all of your archived email, all of the letters, correspondence that you have written, all of the stuff you've created. If you've created works of art on your computer, or music, or Great American Novel, all of those other things, your photographs, your videos, is super important, and you're going to need to make some decisions about that. So you'll start with sort of where are my big categories? Let's get those filled in on the inventory in your digital will. And then you need to make some sort of high-level decisions. Again, I'm all about sort of going from the high-level stuff down to the low-level stuff. I don't want you to get caught up in the details of minutia of metadata for many thousands of files. I want you to sort of start with the big picture. So one of the things you'll have to think about is what sorts of stuff you want to keep and what sorts of stuff you want to get rid of. There are those of us who are sort of digital pack rats, and we keep everything. Maybe not all of that stuff is actually going to be useful to people in the future. Maybe my grandkids don't need to see, every single email that I've saved, including, spam and, password reset messages and stuff. Maybe there are some things that you would just really rather not have pass on to future generations. For whatever reason, it's none of my business. But maybe you feel that there are some things that other people might ignore that are in fact important to you historically, or have sentimental value, and you want to make sure that you have got it straight in your mind what kinds of things you want to keep and what kinds of things you want to discard. Now, I grew up in a family of pack rats, which is why I sort of have digital pack rat tendencies. At a certain point, my parents were going to be moving out of one home into a smaller home, and my dad was fairly old by then. I guess he was probably in his mid-70s or so, and he and my mom had a bit of a disagreement. The topic of the disagreement was how many sledgehammers does a family need? Now, this was a time in my life, in my dad's life, when he could not physically lift a sledgehammer. Nevertheless, his opinion was that the number of sledgehammers needed was, let us say, greater than one, and my mom's opinion was that the number was less than one. So I say this only to say we form habits about how we deal with digital stuff based on how we have dealt with stuff in the physical world. Do you throw stuff away? You can put stuff in your trash, recycling bin, whatever. Some people never empty that. Some people empty it compulsively. Do you delete every email that you get as soon as you're done reading it, or do you save it all, or are you somewhere in between? So you want to reflect on your habits of what kinds of things you keep and discard, and see if they might need to be modified for the purposes of the stuff that you pass on digitally. Possibly the most important decision you will make is who will be your digital executor. Now, the executor of your will, of course, is going to make sure that all the people named in the will get the stuff that they're supposed to get, that taxes are paid, that, you know, all the legalities are dealt with. Similarly, a digital executor should be somebody you know, someone you trust, and someone who definitely has a clue when it comes to technology. And this is someone who is going to have to possibly log into a bunch of accounts, convert files to different formats, send them hither and yon, make sure that everybody gets the things that you say they should get in the format in which they should get them. And this could require some technical expertise. In a perfect world, this will be the very same person as your regular executor. That would be most convenient. If that person does not have the proper technical expertise, you might need to designate someone else to do that, and make sure that you tell your regular executor and kind of coordinate between the two of them so that they can get the job done. I mentioned file formats before. I will mention it again in the future. Let me just say, I have looked into what historians and museum curators and archivists say about, you know, which file formats have the best shot at longevity. And boy, they have some opinions, and some of those opinions are really, really irritating. But if you decide that, well, I've got all these documents in, you know, some wacky word processor format, and I really feel like it would be smarter for me to to convert them all into PDF format, just as an example. You'll want to make those decisions now, not only so that you can put that stuff in your kind of digital archive, but so that as time goes on, you create new documents. You remember, yeah, I better save a copy of this in this other place in a more future-proof format. Now, I am talking mainly about your digital stuff, but I want to make the point that a lot of us have stuff that is important to pass on that isn't digital yet, but it could be. You know, for the last 20 odd years, when I've been taking pictures with digital cameras, and then later with my phone and my tablet, you know, everything is already digital. It was born that way. But I still have hundreds and hundreds of photographs that exist only on paper or on film or on slides. And it's great to preserve those, and you should if you still have them. But things happen to physical objects. Fires and floods and tornadoes and stuff happens. And if you want to give those physical objects the best chance at longevity, it's a good idea to digitize them and add those to your digital collection. So I won't belabor this, but want to start by saying, if you have a lot, you might need to prioritize them, which are the most fragile or the most important to you. If you have a scanner or want to go buy a scanner and you have some time on your hands and you don't mind doing it, great, scan them yourself. If you don't have the hardware, or you don't feel comfortable doing this process, or if it's just too boring to you, you can always outsource it. You can rope in grandchild, niece, nephew, neighbor, someone who can be bribed with, you know, cookies or whatever. They might like to do this for you, or you can hire a company. There are companies out there that'll say, hey, just mail us a box of photographs and we'll professionally scan them all, and we'll charge you per unit, per item. And for maybe a little bit of extra money, we'll even do some retouching for you. So there are ways to get it done, and how you go about doing it is up to you. Now, whether you do it yourself or you hire a company to do it, the names that these files get won't necessarily be revealing or helpful to you. You know, you put something in a scanner, it's going to spit out a file name that's like, you know, the date and the time -1.jpg or whatever file format you use. And that's the best your computer can do for you. But you look at that and say, well, but no, that's my Aunt Jane. And that, you know, it was when we were at the beach in Florida, and, you know, whatever. So in order for this archive to be useful and hopefully searchable, you're going to want to find some way of organizing this information that that is useful in the future. Now, there are those of us who would be inclined to say, well, I'm going to put it in some kind of app like, Adobe Lightroom, and I'm going to add all the tags and metadata and, very carefully enter all the information I can about each photo. And you can do that. Of course, there's no telling whether people 50 years from now will be able to open your Adobe Lightroom archive. I have a friend who had to do this for literally tens of thousands of pictures. And since my friend is a programmer, I thought he probably had some really high-tech way of naming and organizing his files. And he said, no. I opened a plain text file, whatever name the scanner gives me, I just copy and paste that in. Don't bother renaming it. And then I'll press tab and I'll just type names of anybody that I see in the photograph, the place if I know where it is, the date if I know where it is, anything that's on the back, like a photographer's stamp. I just type it in, press return, scan the next one, take the name it gives me, tab, type in what's in it. That way, if 20 years from now, somebody needs to search for, Aunt Jane, Florida, they can just open up that plain text file in any word processor, Control F, type in Aunt Jane, and boom, it's going to show them the file name that has that photograph in it, and or that that subject in it. It's not the only way to do it. It's a suggestion because it's easy, it's low tech, and it's future proof. As I said before, good idea to keep the originals because even though digital copies are handy, those originals have a lot of history to them too. And I know that I love holding in my hands and feeling and smelling old stuff that I know my ancestors held and used. All right, I mentioned passwords earlier. It's a super important topic, and I want to say a few words about it now. The first thing I want to say is, if you do not already use a password manager, please use a password manager. I have written multiple entire books on this topic, but let me just say that if you want to avoid getting scammed, avoid malware, avoid phishing, avoid all the bad things that can happen to someone when there is a password breach, and these happen all the time, you ought to use a unique and strong and random password for every single place. Every single website, every single service should have its own unique, strong password. But generating all those passwords and remembering them and filling it in is more than the brain can handle. I have 1,000 unique passwords. I'm certainly not going to remember them all. So I use a password manager. When I am asked to generate a new password, I say, hey, password manager, give me a new one, and pops it in there. And by the way, remember that for next time. So when I come back to this site again, it'll just fill it in for me. So it requires no work. And as a bonus, those passwords can all be unique and very, very strong and random. So if you don't already use a password manager, please pick one that you like and start using it. I personally happen to like 1Password. A lot of people like LastPass. There's been a little bit of a controversy there because they just changed their free plan. But honestly, this is the sort of thing you should be paying for anyway, because I strongly believe when it comes to especially security-related software, you get what you pay for. There's Dashlane, there's RoboForm, there's a ton of them. You want to look at the features, the prices, do they support whichever platforms and operating systems you happen to use. Pick one and make sure that you put all of your passwords in there. Now, the advantage is once you've done that, your digital executor or your spouse or whoever will be able to unlock all of those passwords with the one password, the master password for your vault. So it's much less work for them, and it's much easier to pass on, here's a file and the password for it, than here's a bunch of stuff. If you, like me, have lots and lots of accounts, you will probably want to make some notes, either add a tag or a heading or note in your password manager, or make a separate list which of these 1,000 are actually interesting or important accounts that somebody should pay attention to. Again, giving your digital executor access to this might mean sharing it in the cloud, of course, encrypted. Might mean that you use some of these programs like LastPass have an emergency contact feature where ahead of time you can say, if I'm unreachable for this amount of time, go ahead and give so-and-so access to my data. There are variations on this. Or you can just simply say, here's where to find the data and here's the password, and keep that information in a safe place. Email is also super important for a couple of reasons. I have, due to my, again, digital pack rat tendencies, tons of email going back decades, and most of it is honestly totally useless. It's just noise. But from time to time, I need to figure out, where was I in, mid-February of 1999? And I'm just not going to come up with that off the top of my head. Sometimes I need to go back and say, well, when did I take that trip? When was I here in business? When did I have to do this particular project at work? When did I buy this thing? And do I still have a receipt for it? Well, I've got all that stuff in email, all of my, travel itineraries and receipts for stuff I bought, and story, conversations I've had with lots of people on lots of topics. There's a treasure trove there. Sometimes it comes in handy for me, but if someone in the future decides that I'm interesting enough to write a biography of, which frankly is quite doubtful, but if it should happen, because I guess I still have time to, become rich and famous, boy, that would be a lot of really useful information, and only a small percentage of it would be deeply embarrassing to me. So there's that. I want to pass that on, but also, once I have expired, a lot of people will not immediately know that, and email is going to keep rolling in. Email from people that didn't know that I died, and email from businesses and bills and stuff from the government and stuff from my accountant and who knows what. So not only does your accumulated email need to be dealt with, but your email accounts that will still be receiving stuff have to be dealt with in some way. One suggestion I'm going to make is, I started using computers in the era when, as I'm sure you all did, when email was a thing that happened in an app. There's a, whether it's Microsoft Outlook or Thunderbird or Apple Mail or whatever, there's an app on your computer, and when you get email, the email is downloaded to your computer, right? Kids these days, can we talk about kids these days? Kids these days like to have stuff in the cloud, all right? They like to use Gmail. I know some folks whose entire experience, lifetime experience of email has 100% been inside a web browser. Now, whether you think this is a great idea or a terrible idea, when it comes to your digital legacy, there's a problem with relying solely on any browser-based email system, whether it's Hotmail or Gmail or any of the many of them. And that is that you can't be sure that those emails that are stored only in the cloud will keep being stored in the cloud indefinitely. Eventually, Google or whoever is going to realize that you're not around anymore, and it's just going to go ahead and delete that. So you do want to make sure that you have, if you don't already, that you've downloaded a local copy of all of your email. Obviously, your digital executor is going to need access not only to the stored email, but also to the accounts. You might want them to set up an out of the office permanently message, or however you would like to phrase that. You might say, look, just run this for 6 months and then shut it down, or whatever. You can decide how you want to deal with that, but they will need to have like username, password, IMAP server, whatever, to access your live account. I can't tell you how your email should be treated in the future, whether it's deleting it all, saving just a part of it, or whatever. You get to decide that for yourself, but you have to decide, because if you don't, then the people who survive you will probably make the wrong decision. Next, social media. Now, I personally am not a big social media user. I feel obligated to check my Facebook account once a year on my birthday, because I know that on that day, a couple dozen people will have been reminded, hey, it's Joe's birthday. Do you want to click here to send a happy birthday message? And of course, they're going to say, okay, click here. And then I feel, obligated to go in and like all the happy birthday messages. I don't really like Facebook. That is putting it mildly, but that's about the extent of how much I use it. Now, my mom, on the other hand, who is in her mid-80s, loves Facebook. She's on it all the time. She has lots of Facebook friends, lots of interactions there. My mom is not on Twitter. I am on Twitter. I am, again, not a heavy user by any means, but at least I pay more attention to it than I do Facebook. So if you happen to be someone who actually pays attention to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, any form of social media, you will again want to leave instructions for what should be done with your social media accounts. Now, you can decide to do whatever you want. And again, if you are such a casual user as I am, it might not matter to you at all. The important thing is, if you put a lot of photographs, stories, conversations in these places that you really think are important to maintain, you can do one of a few things. So you might put in your digital will, after I'm gone, I want my digital executor to log into my Twitter account using these credentials and post the following. And it could be, so long and thanks for all the fish, or it can be a heartfelt message, or it can be, due to death, this person is no longer going to be tweeting. It's up to you. You can make your final words whatever you want, or you can just say, hey, executor, say something nice about me, but let it be known that I'm no longer around. That's one option. You could say, all right, I'm going to download all the stuff that I've ever put on Facebook or Twitter or wherever, and just add that to my personal digital archive, and or archive it online. Some of these services let you do that. They basically let you say, this account is closed, the person is no longer alive, but we're maintaining this stuff here online for the benefit of anybody that might like to see it, for as long as the service manages to stay in business. You could ask your digital executor to delete your account. You may or may not succeed. I have heard of people trying really hard to delete Facebook accounts, and despite having gone through all the steps, they're still there. So I have a saying: what happens on the internet stays on the internet. It's actually quite difficult to guarantee that you have expunged all the digital copies of anything, but you can try if that's your preference. If you happen to be the steward of a social media account for a group like, I don't know, a computer user group, or, bird watching club or church or what have you, some organization or group that will survive you, you might want to specify in your digital will how you would like control of that account to be handed over to someone new, and they will of course need your credentials to be able to do that. Now we come to the big important other category, which really I should give a sexier name to, but it's kind of everything else. So I want to say a word about media. Now earlier I used the term media to mean things like floppy drives and CDs, and floppy disks and CDs and physical media. In this case, I'm using it to refer to things that digital stuff that you may have purchased online. For example, you can purchase and download digital copies of movies, TV shows, albums, software, books, okay? And so you might have a collection of digital stuff that you have bought that you would like to leave to someone. Now, a friend of mine came to me a few years ago and said, you know, Joe, you know that my husband has terminal cancer, and he won't be around for much longer. And, you know, we've all, you know, made peace with this, and it's fine as it can be. But just on a practical note, my husband had tons and tons of movies and TV shows that he purchased from Apple's iTunes store. And what I want to know is, when he is gone, will I still be able to access those? And I was like, probably, maybe not. I'm not sure. It's tricky. Most of the stuff, most of the media you buy that in a downloadable format is copy protected. It's got digital rights management, DRM, applied to it. And the only way that you can decode it is if you have the username and password for the person that bought it. Technically, you don't own it. Technically, it was licensed to you. And for that reason, if Apple or Amazon or whoever, I mean, any entity that sells digital media, if that entity at some point in the future concludes, oh, I realize now that this person is dead, I think we should disable that account. Well, at that moment, your heirs and assigns would no longer be able to access that media with your username and password. So you can set down in writing what your desires are for this stuff, and you should. At the same time, you should also be aware that there may be constraints involving DRM that your heirs will not be able to deal with. Now, I have heard that in many cases there exist technical means whereby an unscrupulous person can remove copy protection from digital media. Certainly not that any of us upstanding citizens would ever do that. But I have heard that such instructions are a Google search away for those, you know, miscreants and ne'er-do-wells who are so inclined. I'm just saying. Same goes for software. Of course, you're going to want to make sure that any software that people might need to get at your stuff is available, and the license codes and all that stuff is ready for them. Now, of course, we probably all, or most of us, have a bunch of cloud accounts. It could be Dropbox, it could be, you know, OneDrive, it could be Google Drive, it could be, you know, online backups of some sort, you know, all the Google services that you could have all kinds of important stuff in various cloud places. So any of those things that are important to you, you'll want to note what you have, where you have it. Again, not like granular detail, just like, well, I've got 1,000 photos on Amazon Drive, you know, so whatever it is, because at some point your digital executor is gonna almost certainly want to pull all that stuff out of the cloud, put it in local storage, because it's not gonna last in the cloud forever without a lot of help. Also, other local data. Do you have external hard drives, either, you know, live or backups? Do you have other media that you have, you know, in your home or office that has important stuff on it? Of course, backups are always super important, but they become extra important when it comes to what may come after, because just as you might accidentally lose data, your son, daughter, whoever ends up inheriting your computer could also lose data. And so your backups are going to turn out to be quite important, and someone else is going to need to know what you have and where it is. All right, so what you will have done by this point is filled out most of your digital will. It's going to include an inventory of your digital stuff, at least the important bits, and what you would like to have done with it. I want to leave all of my photos to these 8 people, and I want to leave my videos to this person, and I want to give this person access to my email accounts, and they'll do this with it. So this is all written down. Now, you've decided what files and folders you feel are important to keep. And because they're digital, you can't just say, we're going to put these in a safe deposit box. You got to do something to preserve them. So that's the part I want to talk about next. Now, you want something to last for 10 years, 50 years, 100 years. What kind of media should you put it on? Well, I'm sorry to say that literally all the choices are terrible. There are no great choices right now. And because there are no great choices, I'm going to recommend that you use at least 2 less than great choices. And we'll talk about what to do about their not so greatness in just a moment. So here are some examples. Now, there are companies that sell these lovely gold-plated recordable CDs and DVDs, or silver-plated, and they're like, you know, this isn't just like the dye, this is like gold. And we, the manufacturer, guarantee that this will last for 100 years. Well, maybe it will, maybe it won't. The manufacturer hasn't been around for 100 years to actually test that. But even if the data survives, who knows whether anybody will be able to find a CD reader or DVD reader 50 years from now. I mean, do you have a 5 1/4 inch floppy drive handy? I don't. So, you know, media, just because it exists doesn't mean it can actually be read. Well, what about the stuff we normally use, like hard drives and SSDs? We use these for primary storage. We use these for backups. They're great because they're relatively inexpensive and they're fast and they hold a lot. That's all true, but I cannot tell you how many hard drives of mine have died over the years. Many, many of them. Even if you put a hard drive in a cool, dry place and, you know, no vibration, no magnetic fields, stuff can happen over time. Hard drives can seize up. SSDs can lose data too, especially if you haven't plugged them in to have any power going to them in months or years. Every type of digital media that we have come up with so far is subject to data loss to one degree or another, with one amount of risk or another in one or another time frame. I would not assume that if I put all of my data on a brand new hard drive and put it in a drawer somewhere, that would definitely be readable even 5 years from now. So it's an idea, but it's not totally safe. Well, we mentioned cloud storage. And cloud storage is nice because somebody else gets to worry about replacing the hardware when it wears out and, you know, doing backups and all those great things. Problem with cloud storage, of course, is that number one, we don't know that any of these companies will still be in business 20 years from now. I mean, a lot of tech giants have disappeared already, and more will. We don't know that there will be such a thing as Google in 50 years. I mean, it seems pretty probable to us. It seems like, well, golly, companies the size of Apple and Microsoft and Oracle and whoever, like they're so big, they're going to be around forever, but they might not be. We don't know. Even if the company is still around, even if the company is still offering cloud storage, it's really not likely to be free forever. So unless you have somebody who is willing to keep paying indefinitely for cloud storage and maybe moving your stuff to a different cloud storage provider when one gets ready to go out of business, it's not necessarily safe. Well, one thing we do know how to preserve for a long time is paper. Well, boy, you can go to a museum and find books that are, you know, hundreds, even thousands of years old. You can find like old papyrus. You can find really ancient manuscripts. They might be scrolls. They might not be, you know, codex, but you can find really old paper of one description or another. We know how to preserve paper. It's not that hard. If you want to print out all of your hundreds of thousands of emails, you can. It would be quite a job and quite a huge stack of paper. You could do that. There will be some kinds of things that will be really hard to print out, such as movies and audio recordings. So it's not going to work for everything, but it might work for some things. Now, if you want to go all out, there's this company that makes these sapphire discs called Nanoforms. And basically, they take a sapphire disc, super, super, super high-res laser printer, and they etch anything you want onto these discs really, really small. So it can be just like anything black and white. Okay, so it's like a black and white laser printer. They're just literally etching this onto the sapphire. Then they'll take a second sapphire disc and fuse it to the first one. Sapphire is really strong. It is waterproof. It is impervious to magnetic fields. It is heat proof. This company says you can even drop a nanoform in lava and it'll be okay. Nuclear war, not going to do anything to that. Like, this is the most indestructible way of storing data. And as a bonus, people 100 years from now or 1,000 years from now won't need to have some fancy computer or some specific technology to read it. All they need is a magnifying glass, because that's literally all they've done is they've made your documents really, really, really small on this sapphire disk. So this company is touting this as like the very best way of preserving your data forever. And that might be true. Of course, you're going to pay like thousands of dollars for each one of these things. So there's that. You also might lose them. So there's that. And the same things I said about paper are true here. It's black and white. So you can't use this medium for storing videos and other kinds of digital data. So my point being, all of these and others have some pros, have some cons. None of them are perfect. So you might want to consider choosing a couple. And then what you're going to actually do once you've chosen your media is, hey, create a data archive, all those files and emails and photos and videos and things that you decided you wanted to keep for the future, copy them onto it. You're going to want to, of course, have more than one copy. Maybe one goes in a safe deposit box, maybe one goes in a drawer someplace. You want to keep them safe and have more than one of them. Now, a little trick that I'd like to recommend, if you have a son, daughter, grandchild, someone related to you and pretty close to you, there's another way that you can help. And again, this is in addition to, not instead of, but another way to help keep your data archive secure long into the future. So what you do is you bring this person in front of you, and you have to use these exact words. You say, you get your best like puppy dog eyes and say, "How much do you love me?" You have to say that, because once you've said that, like, they're stuck. They're not going to say, well, Dad, I don't love you enough to do it. No, of course, you've really got them now. So you say, do you love me enough to donate a tiny, tiny little like 50 gigabyte corner of your hard drive to me? And be like, how's that again? You say, well, your computer, tablet, whatever, your main computing device. You got a lot of storage on it, right? How about if you put a copy of my digital archive just away in the corner someplace? You don't have to do anything with it. You just have to let me have that space. That way, as this person moves from device to device to device over the years, and they migrate their data over, your archive will come with it. As they back up their device to the cloud or wherever they back it up, your stuff will be backed up along with it. This is great because it keeps your data alive. Unlike just sticking it on a storage device in the closet, in which case we're not actively caring for it. Having that data exist along with somebody's live data gives it a greater shot at longevity. So That's my suggestion to you. Of course, we hope that we're going to keep living for quite some time, and you might need to pop into those archives every year or two and add new material to them as you accumulate it. You might want to copy it onto Fresh Media, and you will certainly want to make sure that your digital executor and your heirs in the future copy your stuff onto Fresh Media from time to time as well. Even though you should not keep all your stuff only on your computer, tablet, whatever, it will be a help for your heirs to have the actual machinery too. So you want to make sure that you pass that on in your will along with instructions for getting at the stuff on it. So once you've assembled that, you've got your digital will filled out, you've got your data archive in one or preferably 2 or 3 physical formats. Actually create a dossier for yourself. It could be, manila envelope or some other storage object of your choosing, but put all the stuff in it. Put a copy of your regular will, put a copy of your digital will, put some instructions like, dear person who finds this, here's what all this stuff is and what you should do with it. Obviously, a copy of your data archive itself. And then a thing I call how to be me. So my point with this, and again, I expand on it quite a bit in the book, is if there is stuff that only you know how to do that is important for the maintenance of your family, your house, your car, your business, it's a good idea to write down those instructions. Could be something as simple as, well, every March you got to clean out the gutters. And to do that, you're going to need to use this letter, not that letter, and whatever it may be. The instructions for how to do that daily, weekly, yearly stuff that only you know how to do, somebody else is going to have to do it. And as I referenced earlier, that might not just be your spouse after you've died, it could be your house sitter when you're on vacation. So it's a really good idea to think about anything that only you know how to do, and that information is only in your head, and write down instructions for somebody else. Finally, my sincere recommendation to all of you is to write your own obituary. Of course, that's called an autobituary because it's a cross between autobiography and obituary. This is starting to be kind of a trend, and the idea here is, like I've had a number of relatives die recently, and I read their obituaries, and I'm like, I don't recognize this person. Like that, the description in the obituary does not even remotely match my recollection or my mental image of this person. And that's because most obituaries are just boilerplate. They're just kind of fill in the blank stuff. Well, this person, graduated from this high school and went to that university and was a member of this church and, survived by these people and they did this for a living. And, it's just boilerplate. It's boring. It's boring, and it doesn't really reflect who that person is. You can find obituaries that people have written for themselves before they died. And they just said, okay, when I'm gone, I want you to fill in the date, fill in the cause of death. This is what I want you to publish. And they're fantastic. They're amazing. They're funny. They're sweet. They're heartwarming because they let you see that person as they really were, or at least as they perceived themselves. So take an afternoon, write what you would like other people to know about you in your own obituary. And I think your family will thank you for it, not least because then they don't have to bother with doing that really difficult and distasteful work. So even though I've talked for a bit longer than I planned to, I have only grazed the merest surface of this subject matter. So I really hope that you will pick up a copy of this book with that coupon code and dig into all the details, set aside some time, and create a digital will for yourself and an archive that you can pass on to future generations. Of course, while you're on our site, I hope you'll also avail yourself of all of our other books on many, many topics. And of course, that coupon code there is good for any of them or all of them. Come back as many times as you want. You can buy 60 books with that code, and we would be very grateful for your business. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and ask if there are any questions. If you have a question, don't forget to unmute yourself.
Wow. No questions? I became the host, so
Okay.
don't have any questions. I did think that was a very good presentation.
Thank you. Well, I thank you for your kind attention. It's been really nice spending some time with you. I hope we can do this again sometime. If you later on figure out that you have some questions for me, I'm reachable by email, and I hope you won't be bashful.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate your kind attention, and I'll see you next time.
All right, thank you. Jim, are you there?
I have a question for Everett. Is this going to be available on YouTube soon?
Yes, it will. I'm still recording, of course. When we decide that we're finished, I'll stop it. But yes, probably no earlier than tomorrow, though.
I
So,
can't get unmuted. Did I get unmuted now?
yes, you did.
I wanted to ask 2 or 3 questions, but I could not get unmuted. And I wanted to write some items in chat, but my chat is disabled, it says.
I don't know why that would be.
I called you on the telephone and asked you to check on it.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's probably because he made someone else the
Okay.
co-host, Mary Francis. The chat gets
That concludes the meeting and the presentation.
Okay, with
I
that,
did
I will.
put in chat, I did put a document for the phone numbers for the places that are given the virus shots, Kroger's and Giant Eagle and so forth.
My chat is disabled. There's nothing in there.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, if this is considered to be the conclusion of the presentation, I will go ahead and stop the video and we can continue on with questions or whatever. So we're going to stop it right now.